My wife's work schedule is affecting our family's function and our own relationship. 34F, 36M. My wife and I are both working professionals with comparable levels of education, but in quite different fields. I am a hospital-based physician and make about $470,000 per year. My wife works in education and makes roughly $82,000 per year. We've been married for almost 7 years and had our first child shortly after our 1-year anniversary. Currently, we have a 4-year-old and a 5-year-old. They're busy kids who we feel require an above-average level of energy from us, but they're typically developing, healthy, and we love them. Prior to having children, my wife identified closely with her profession. She's quite good at what she does, and certainly enjoys it. I enjoy my work enough to do it indefinitely, but I wouldn't say that I'm in love with it. That said, given our income discrepancy of almost 500%, my income and hours worked have a much heavier impact on what we can do in our free time than hers do. After having our first child, my wife went on an 18-month maternity leave. This child wasn't an easy baby, and as we'd had to move across the country for work, my wife was thousands of miles from her beloved family. My wife's mother is well-intentioned, but is also somewhat manipulative and took every opportunity to insist that things would be so much easier if we were at home, because of the extra support we'd have from them. It was a hard year, but we got through it. When our oldest was 16 months old, we learned that we would soon be having our second child. It was an unexpected surprise, but not entirely unplanned. Because of how the timing lined up, my wife's previous employer let her go as they couldn't leave her previous position empty for 3 years. The initial 18-month maternity leave turned into a roughly 33-month leave of absence from her profession. By April 2020, our second child was old enough to attend daycare. At this time, I was making about $580,000 per year and we were well established in our community. I developed a fulfilling professional niche that required about 50 hours per week and things were great. My wife was hopeful to return to work. I was supportive, and she was mainly interested in part-time positions. During her 3 years at home, she'd taken on basically all of the housekeeping responsibilities and I was under-contributing at home, although we did have a cleaner come twice weekly. As we would be saving 30 hours per week of child care though, and only adding 20 hours per week of her working, we felt it would be quite manageable for her to go back part-time. Her income wouldn't greatly affect us financially, but she felt like she'd lost part of herself, so I was hopeful returning to work would make her happier. For what it's worth, I've since increased the amount of work I do around the house. Unfortunately, only full-time work was immediately available. I didn't think she should take a full-time position, as we certainly didn't have 10 additional hours per week to spare. She disagreed and felt that I was being misogynistic and paternal by not supporting her in returning to the profession she was good at and fulfilled by. After a heated discussion, I acquiesced to her demands and said she could do whatever she wants, but that I thought it was going to go poorly. Her mother used this as an opportunity to further compel her to return home. My wife was hired in May 2020, which was a strange time for all of us. Because of the restrictions imposed on society during the early stages of COVID, she wasn't able to get the adult social stimulation she was hopeful for from her work, and she seemed more frustrated by her responsibilities than fulfilled by them. In June 2020, she told me that she would be returning home to be closer with her family, and that she was hopeful I would accompany her and the children. I didn't appreciate the ultimatum, but the strangeness of early COVID showed me that the friends I'd made in the community we'd been in for 4 years were fairly superficial. As such, there was a certain attraction in the idea of returning to the lifelong friends I'd made from where my wife and I met, so I, once again, reluctantly agreed to what she'd insisted upon. Initially we planned to move home in October 2022. The reason for the delay was that there would be a substantial drop in my income, and I could only expect to make $350,000 per year after coming home. I wanted to save up some money prior to leaving my established role. An unexpected and quite large financial windfall came in February 2021, and I was able to give my wife the news that I could get the family home in July 2021. She was ecstatic. So was her mother. The windfall allowed me to buy about 8 acres of waterfront land on which we would build our dream home. I carved out 1.1 acres for her parents to build on so that she could live next door to them. We expected that our children would love this arrangement and that the grandparent supports would enable my wife and I to reignite our relationship if we weren't so consumed by parenthood. The 24th of July 365. Between September 2021 and February 2022 I was quite busy getting settled into my new job and overseeing the construction of our home. My wife was off work for this period and the kids were once again in daycare. My wife was excited to spend the free time that daycare offered us tending to the garden and raising chickens on our new farm. By March 2022 my wife had decided that she once again wished to return to work, but only on a part-time basis as she yet again felt this was all she needed to be professionally and personally fulfilled. Thankfully, her returning to work also enabled us to send our kids to the school of our choice due to a teachers' union agreement, which would have not been possible otherwise, as where we were building wasn't in the right school catchment. We agreed that it would be best for her to return to work part-time in fall 2023. Unfortunately, positions are not always open for my wife's role. In April 2022 an opening became available, with a start date of June 2022. It was a full-time position. I explained to my wife that this would be too much for our family to take on and that our family unit didn't have 40 hours per week to spare at that time. Once again, this was met with accusations of being controlling and misogynistic. As this position was the only guaranteed way for our kids to go to our preferred school, though, we agreed that she would return to work, but only until our youngest was locked in. Advice requests section. This past year hasn't been good. My work starts at 9, and my wife starts at 7:40. I'm often covering phone calls from the hospital overnight, and I don't naturally get out of bed until around 6:45 a.m. By the time I've showered and dressed, it's about 7:15 before I get downstairs. My wife's job requires that she gets up at about 6:20, which is earlier than her natural wake-up time. Since she gets downstairs first, she cooks breakfast for the family. Her impression is that I do nothing in the mornings, even though I get the kids up, dressed, and ready for school while she cooks. My wife gets our oldest to school at about 7:40. I drop our youngest off to daycare at about 8:40, after spending some time at home reviewing lab results and other work-related aspects. She usually picks both kids up as her work ends at 2:30. If she wants to go shopping or has to pick up groceries, the kids will stay at daycare or the after-school program longer and she'll get them at around 4 p.m. After getting home, she'll typically play with the kids and then make supper for the family. I finish my work at around 4:30 p.m. and get home at 5. We eat together and I play with the kids while she relaxes. I'll then put the kids down to bed between 6:45 p.m. and 7:15 p.m., during which time she cleans up for the evening. For what it's worth, we also have cleaners that come in every week to take that chore off our lists. We just received word that our second child has been locked in for enrollment at our preferred school. This is not contingent on my wife continuing in her current role. In the past year I've successfully been able to increase my income to about $470,000 per year, and I've just been offered an opportunity to earn an additional $200,000 per year for roughly 6 hours per week of additional work. My wife has applied to start a job share with one of her colleagues, which would allow her to reduce her weekly hours to about 18-week, a reduction of 22 hours per week. This request may be declined, which would require her to either 1. Continue on at full-time in her current position, 2. Leave work, or 3. Take one of the other part-time opportunities that she's been offered, in different organizations. I would not be able to take the additional $200,000 per year position if she were to continue full-time. I also don't expect that this opportunity will be available for much longer. She has indicated that if she is faced with this decision, she would opt to continue on full-time, even though this would represent a $170,000 per year loss for the family compared to if she switched to part-time at a different organization. This morning, my wife was once again in a very foul mood after having had to get up earlier than she would like to get ready for work. I was on call last night, which meant that at breakfast I was 24 hours into a 32-hour shift. She was upset that the family was running behind, even though I'd made sure to get the kids ready as per the usual. I told her that the reason she was angry is because we were mainly strapped for time because of her work's early start. She was upset at this comment, and made her feelings clear. I told her that we didn't need her to be doing this every day, and that it made every morning awful and greatly cut down on the amount of time we could spend together. She told me that I could cut down on hours just as easily as she could. I got angry and told her that even if I could cut down on my hours, the loss of income would actually affect our lifestyle and future instead of just my own self-actualization. I told her that even though she's good at what she does, it doesn't serve much purpose for our family unit and may even be harming it. In a moment of anger, I told her that her working full-time was like a hobby that had gotten out of control. She didn't take kindly to this. I've been told a few times today that she wants to get divorced. I don't think she truly means that, but it's clear that she doesn't agree with my position that her working full-time is making our lives unnecessarily difficult and that she could be just as fulfilled working part-time, which is what we'd initially agreed to. She knows that her full-time work is making it difficult to schedule and pay for the beautiful vacations that we can finally consider now that the kids are older. None of this is connecting with her, though, and her position is that I'm being disrespectful and misogynistic for suggesting that she cut back on her hours. Somehow, this is an affront to feminism. Unfortunately, a lot of this could have been avoided if her mother had actually delivered the supports she'd promised. Instead, it's like pulling teeth to get more than an hour of childcare at a time out of her. The last time they took them overnight was December 15th, and we don't have anything further scheduled until November. At least I get to live next door to that. How can I gently but clearly express to my wife that although it's understandable that she wants to work, a full-time commitment has a gravely detrimental impact on our well-being, finances, and future opportunities? Info. If you're making $470K a year, possibly $650K a year, what's preventing you from hiring household help? It sounds like a lot of your family issues could be solved by a nanny and housekeeper. Are you deeply in debt or do you have a huge gambling problem? It is hard to believe earning $470K vs $670K will be gravely detrimental to your family's future. You haven't listened to your wife and are repeatedly dismissive of what she says she needs. You've done that for years. What she is asking for is not unreasonable. I believe she is very serious about that divorce. My advice: take her seriously. Edit. Looking at your posts, it's gambling, isn't it? Marriage counseling, and you need it now. Hire an au pair from an agency. That way she can work and so can you. BTW, the loss of income you'd face is more than 2x what I make in a year. I have a great life. It's hard to feel sorry for you, especially when you seem to be completely oblivious to how incredibly privileged you are. Holy shit, dude, you didn't just insult her, you burned the fucking bridge down between you. My 31M wife, 30F, often makes me feel like I have a second child. My 31M wife, 30F, often makes me feel like I have 2 kids. Let me start off with the good. My wife is a great person. She's a hard worker and very easy to be around for everyone, not just me. She's a good mother to our child and generally easygoing. We have been together 13 years, married for 9, with our child being born 3 years ago. I don't know if what is bothering me is just starting to itch worse or if I'm getting truly tired of it. My issue is, a lot of the time I feel like I'm taking care of another child and being with my wife in the day-to-day things. I've been doing it for so long, she just comes to expect it now. I'm just not seeing any personal growth out of her and it's irritating me because it really affects my thoughts regarding our long-term goals. In no particular order, here are some of my quarrels. I regularly have to get her out of bed after multiple alarms so she's not late for work. She won't eat most vegetables. I take care of paying all the bills. I plan and schedule all the trips, and generally make all the major decisions. I handle all the correspondence with our friends and planning activities, even with her parents. I take care of all the car maintenance. I do daycare duty to and from 95% of the time, and when I ask her to, she acts put out. She stares at her phone constantly, yet acts put out if I choose to go sink myself into one of my hobbies rather than sit with her. I make her coffee every morning. We have separate coffee pots because she won't drink my coffee. She bought a nice coffee pot that sat on the counter unused, going to Starbucks every day for months until I started making it for her. I do 90% of the cooking, not frozen dinners, real, from scratch, meals. I enjoy this, but if I don't cook, we just snack. She rarely offers to cook a meal. And she won't eat leftovers. Every project she starts, gets quit halfway through, after the money is spent, and goes unfinished unless I take it over. On her days off, works 3/12s, she stares at her phone for hours at a time, then late in the day will start 4 or 5 chores at a time, laundry, dishes, etc., and then quit without finishing them and complain about not having time. And it's worth noting, I do help with these things. And when she's doing household chores, a lot of the time she's unapproachable. Like she's pissed she's having to do it. I've always tried to make her life as easy as possible because she does work and contribute. But I make pretty good money and I'll regularly come home to boxes, about every day, from Amazon or wherever with stuff that goes unused a lot of the time. I don't nitpick these things because we have a good life, but these days, I just don't feel like I have a partner. Over the years I've brought up changes I'd like to see from time to time, but she just starts crying immediately and I'm forced to drop it, and I'm not mean about it. It's often little stuff like, can you take off your shoes in one spot so there's not 10 pairs all over the house? Or, can you turn the ceiling fan off when you leave the bedroom for the day? I have brought up phone time multiple times, but nothing ever changes. I've just let it go and I'd venture I am just as bad now because I don't want to fight about it anymore. On to our sex life. I will freely admit my sex drive is higher than hers. Over the years though she's only ever initiated a handful of times. Literally 5-6 times. I've expressed this makes me feel unwanted or undesirable, which is something I struggle with personally. But like other things, it basically goes unnoticed. She cries before I can get my feelings out, and we move on. She can go weeks at a time without sex and I struggle with that. More often than not, when we do have sex, it feels like once she's satisfied, she's just waiting for it to be over. I take pleasure in pleasuring her, and she obviously does not feel the same. She is very apprehensive to try new things and just lacks a sense of fun or adventure when it comes to sex. I'll admit our sexual situation bothers me the most. I kinda feel like I could ignore all the other stuff if my deeds were being acknowledged in the bedroom. But I'm starting to feel very alone and very used. I feel like I have a person to take care of, not a partner. Too long did not read. My wife feels like another child to take care of, not a partner. It's making me feel used and alone. Not really advice on what to do necessarily, but a good place to start is to really reflect on what you get out of this relationship. Yes, relationships are two-way streets, but it doesn't sound like she puts in any effort at all. What's the benefit to you for remaining in the relationship? Go to a marriage and family therapist together. You guys are at the point a lot of people get to. Which is this how it's going to be? It's a normal stage and opportunity for growth. Just curious if your wife grew up in an alcoholic household? Leave now, she doesn't respect you, doesn't love you, you're just her safety net. Are you me? This sounds almost completely like my situation with my wife except we don't have kids. I'm sorry you are having to go through this. It can be exhausting trying hard but not feeling like your spouse is putting in the same effort. To be honest, I'm about to work on divorce, but our situation is different without a kid in the mix. I would suggest having a sit-down wake-up call intervention about how you are unhappy in the relationship and need real changes for this to be successful long-term. I've come to the realization that life is way too short to be unhappy and you only have one shot at it, which is why I'm making the change in my own. I feel awful about what it will do to her, but in the end we all have to be somewhat selfish for our own mental and physical happiness. Therapy is a must to help each other communicate your struggles to be able to go through this together. Talk to her. I, 25M, caught my wife of 1 year, 23F, cheating on me, need help. Hey guys, I, 25M, got married to my wife, 23F, last May. We have had a pretty solid first year of marriage and we were looking forward to our future. This past March, she flew home to California for one of her friend's birthday weekends. The entire weekend there was a guy there that her friend brought who was apparently hitting on her the entire weekend. Telling her she looks nice, putting his hand on her back, etc. This guy and her friend whose birthday it was had been hooking up the whole weekend, and my wife even got in bed with them one night after they had sex and they all cuddled together. Anyways, my wife gets home that weekend and immediately tells me about how she got in bed and cuddled with them. She didn't tell me anything else about his inappropriate behavior. She assured me nothing sexual happened, but that she realized it was probably a boundary she shouldn't have crossed, and so she wanted to tell me. I told her I thought it was weird and yeah, it was crossing a boundary, but ultimately I trusted her honesty and didn't make much of the situation. And she told me that I don't need to worry and that she wished I could have been there that weekend because all of her friends were missing me, and she said I would get along so well with the guy that I was concerned about. So, I guess with that I just thought there was nothing else for me to know. Fast forward a few weeks, and she is Snapchatting this guy a lot. He eventually becomes her best friend on Snapchat, and she Snapchats a lot of people. There was even an instance where we were laying on the couch together and she opened a Snapchat from him and immediately turned away from me so I couldn't see. I immediately was weirded out by this, so I called her out. She just told me she didn't want me to get the wrong idea about her Snapchatting him, and that's why she turned away from me. She showed me what they were talking about, and he was just giving her advice on a new medication she was taking because he is studying medicine. So again, I gave her the benefit of the doubt and didn't think much of it. Fast forward to yesterday. I look at her text messages and see she had just texted this guy. I open the thread and the last thing she texted him was, "I'll open your Snapchat later, I'm with my husband and I don't want him to see me smiling all cheesy." Naturally, I immediately went to their Snapchat convo and started reading. The very last message she had sent him was, "I'm low-key scared we are gonna kiss next time I see you." I scroll up a little further and I see their conversation following a story she uploaded that day. Her and I went for a run and she posted a fitness story kind of showing off her body. He responded it with some bullshit about how he was gonna come kidnap her and she was playing along telling him to do it. I felt my entire body get hot reading those messages. I couldn't believe how angry it made me to see that. I never in 1,000,000 years would have expected something like this from my wife. We talked about it all last night, and even though nothing physical happened between the two of them, they didn't have the opportunity yet. And they didn't sext or anything, she was still emotionally cheating on me. I am at a point where I just feel like an idiot and a fool. I feel like I trusted her too much and she just betrayed me. And I'm also pissed at all of her friends from back home who I thought were also my friends. My wife told me that they all knew they were a but inappropriate with each other that birthday weekend, and they advised her to tell me about it. Neither of them had the courtesy to let me know about it, and so they just let 6 weeks of emotional cheating happen and not even give me a heads up. Does anybody have thoughts on this situation? I am considering separating and divorcing, but there is a part of me that is afraid of losing her and making that decision. And I'm also not sure if emotionally cheating is something that warrants divorce, but I certainly feel very betrayed. Thank you for anybody that reads this and can offer some advice. I'm sending this from my lowest low. You can't lose nothing that is bad for you. There's other girls who can treat you better. Always choose peace of mind. I'd divorce. Mate, this is where your future is decided. You are young, 1 year of marriage, no kids. If you get out of this now you will escape pretty unscathed. This woman is a bad investment. Her behavior is secretive and poisonous to the relationship. All evidence and common sense says this is where you should part ways. If you stay you are going to lose so much more. You are going to suffer so much more, but that decision is up to you. She knew what she was doing was wrong. She said it herself. If I were you, I'd want to know why before I make that decision. Why did she hide it? Why didn't she cut it off? First, she needs to block him from everything. But can you trust her again? Girlfriend, 23 female. Appears to be seeing this guy, 21 male, behind my 25 male, back. Update. This probably warrants an update post, but I can't be bothered ATM and will just sum it up here. I reached out to the guy and he seems nice, but I can't tell if he's bullshitting and I don't really care at this point. He said their relationship has been platonic, but she does act inappropriately sometimes when they're together, but he brushes her off. He said that he did like her but sees her as a lost cause who doesn't know what she wants, so has been trying to distance himself. He also said she's the one who reaches out to him and asks to go out. But I've seen multiple of instances of the opposite, so I don't trust what he says. I think he's trying to cover his back. Either way, I'm breaking up with her. Too long did not read. Girlfriend goes out with a friend, who she knows likes her. She's never told me anything about him and she also appears to be secretive to him about me. I sometimes go on her laptop to help with work stuff. Last time I was on it, a message came through from this guy I'd never heard of. I looked and they appear to message very frequently, but the fact that I only just saw it after how many months gives me the impression that she mutes notifications from him when with me, but forgot to this time around. I don't mind people having friends, but from the messages I've seen, this friendship seems to be very strange. The messages are platonic enough for the most part, but she is a very reserved girl and the messages between us would appear to be platonic to an outsider, so I can't just take it at the surface level. I also know they message on multiple apps, because in some messages she's like, "Hold on, we'll go to other chat," which just adds to my suspicions. I have no idea what this other chat is. But that's not even what upsets me the most. Like I said, I'm fine with her having friends, but there were a few conversations that make me think that it isn't just an ordinary friendship. I don't want to analyze too much of the convos in this post because it'll get too long, but a good summary would be that they seemed to confess to liking each other when they were out somewhere, And the convo the next day was basically her saying that she likes him but doesn't know what to do. And, at least for now, these were her exact words, "She's with me." Initially I thought okay, fair. A boundary was crossed and she set the record straight. However, prior to that convo they seemed to hang out as part of a work group, but following that convo, they started hanging out alone. Just the two of them. Messages are one thing, I can just read them and come to a conclusion, but what on earth happens when they're out together? And why the hell would she hang out with a guy who she knows likes her if there wasn't some hidden motive? Oh, and there is something else. She usually stays at mine every weekend, but she doesn't tell him that. She tells him that she's hanging out with family, or going to a friend's, which makes me think she's been hiding me from him too in recent weeks. I don't know why she would do that, especially since she told him she's with me, but that was 3 months ago. I haven't told her anything because there are so many gaps and I don't want any plausible deniability. I need to see this other chat, but she is extremely private, so there is no precedent to look at her phone. I think I'm going to ask who he is, and mention that I saw a message come from him and see what she says. If I get the impression that she's being dishonest, I'll tell her what I saw and go from there. I don't want to come to any conclusions before at least speaking to her, so I want to get it right. How should I go about this? Shall I wait for more proof or bring it up to her now? Just end it. You don't need this nonsense in your life. I'm going to sound like such an old prick, but you're so young. Is this really something you want to fight for? Hey, I was on your laptop the other day to help you with work stuff and some message popped up from this guy. Who is that? If she admitted to him that she liked him and that she's with you, at least for now, means that there's at least an emotional affair. You have to confront her. It's also a red flag that she's being extremely private as well. She might be cheating on you. Talk to her, now. She's untrustworthy and doesn't value you. Do you intend on finding out years down the line? To be honest, I'd ghost her and let her be with this new guy while you move on to someone more worthy.